Episode 2 Kindergarten and Primary School in Australia. Z.I.E. Talk with me. Z.I.E. Talk with me. Immerse yourself, express yourself, learn English naturally. Hey everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Z.I.E. Talk with me.
So, last week we mentioned that we'd be talking about our educational journeys, and we realised that this actually encompasses both our time at school and our time at university. So we thought that in this episode we'll just focus on our time at school, and particularly we're going to focus on our time in kindergarten and primary school. But we might have a lot to talk about, so just a warning that this episode might be split into two. Especially if we end up talking for a long time.
Yep. Also, please note that this is our personal experiences having attended kindergarten and primary school in Melbourne, Australia, a long time ago.
Yep.
And everyone's experiences might be slightly different. So please note this is just our experience and it may differ for other people.
Yep. So that's our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start at the beginning, shall we? Kindergarten.
Oh, kindergarten.
So
long time ago.
Exactly. A really long time ago. So kindergarten starts at 4 or 5 years old. So that depends on what month you were born.
Yeah. So if you're born before April, you would start kindergarten at 4 years old. If you're born after April, you would start at 5 years old.
Yep. So exactly. So it's a bit strange system. I still don't know why they do that, but that basically sets up your entire schooling journey and why some people graduate at 17 and why some people graduate at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I had my birthday after April. So I started kindergarten when I was 5 years old.
For me, I was born before April. So I started at 4 years old and ended up graduating at 17.
Yeah. So we're both the same and everyone's education is the same. It's just that some people start earlier and some people start later.
There's no disadvantage or advantage of your age because everyone starts at the same level.
Yeah. So kindergarten. Kindergarten was a time when everyone would just have fun, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
There was absolutely no studying in kindergarten in Melbourne for us anyway.
It was just to integrate children into a study learning environment with other people, because before that you would just mostly be at home unless you went to childcare, which we don't really delve into.
Maybe another episode, but not
maybe
now.
another episode, but we'll try and focus more on kindergarten. So kindergarten, you would just play around, make new friends. It wouldn't last very long, would it?
Yeah. We'd only have kindergarten about 3 days a week.
Yeah, and 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, it would probably go from around 9 in the morning till I think it was probably 1 or 2 p.m. It wasn't too late, and it was definitely shorter than our normal school day.
Yeah.
I do remember in kindergarten, we do lots of arts and craft. So
yeah.
I remember doing lots of painting, gluing things together, drawing.
Mm-hmm.
What else did we do?
Well, I remember we used to sit in this huge circle on the floor, and then our teachers would read stories to us, or we learn songs and just sing in class.
There was a lot of singing and dancing as well.
It was very fun.
Learning different songs, reading different stories. Even though we weren't the ones who were reading, we were the ones listening to the teacher read.
Yes, we got to engage with that at an early age.
Yeah, we didn't know how to read at that age because
unless
of course you learned it at home, but in school there was no reading or no studying or no real subject-wise learning. You're just learning to interact with other people, developing yourself as an individual, exploring, gaining creativity, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, kindergarten was basically what you do at home, playing around, but with other people and a teacher there to supervise you.
Yeah, exactly. And then so after kindergarten, we had primary school. So primary school is basically, for us, it was from prep to year 6.
Yeah.
So altogether, it was prep 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 7 years of primary school.
7 long years.
Yep. And so, maybe we should talk about the school year structure first.
Yes. Okay. So school, the first days of school started in late January and ended in December, just a few days before Christmas.
Yeah, generally around like the 22nd of December
Yeah.
was when most schools would end. Of course, some schools ended earlier, particularly if you're a private school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll go into that in another episode.
Yes.
But yeah, so we'd start in late January and end in December.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we had 4 terms.
Yeah, 4 terms.
To break up our school year. Terms 1 to 4 and
2 semesters, which were term 1 and term 2. That was the first semester, and term 3 and term 4 was the second semester.
Yeah. And each term would last for about 10 to 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that also depended a bit on the public holidays that we'd have in Australia. So the first term would end just before Easter, or like sometimes a week before Easter,
depending on like when Easter came.
Yeah. And then we'd have 2 weeks of holidays.
Amazing holidays. And then we'd start our second term after those 2 weeks, and it would end in the middle of the year, so around June, July, and then we'd have our second like bunch of holidays, another 2 weeks, which was our winter holidays.
Yep, because we have winter in the middle of the year, and summer at the end or start of the year. And then we would have another term, so term 3, and then that would last about 10 to 12 weeks, and then we'd end in September.
Yeah.
And so that was actually usually during the time of our Australian Football League Grand Final.
Yes.
So
we might delve into that in another episode.
So yes, that was roughly when it would end, like sometime in September, and then we'd have 2 weeks holiday.
And then we'd come back, do another 10 weeks.
Yep,
and
our
then,
final term.
Yep, our final term. And then we'd finish just before Christmas. And then we'd have our longest holiday, 6 weeks or sometimes 7. And that was our summer holidays, which is the longest holidays of the year.
Yep.
And then we start the next school year after the holidays are over.
Yep. So in primary school, the first thing we have is prep.
Yes.
And prep is basically our foundational year. And to be honest, prep is more so like kindergarten, but
a bit more advanced.
So it's not really like formal learning per se yet. It's more getting you ready to go to school. So in prep, I think, especially the first few weeks, you wouldn't go to school every day. You'd probably only go about 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah. And then you would gradually build that up to 5 days a week. And in prep, what we basically did was, again, a lot more in like kindergarten. So we'd do a lot of interaction with peers.
Yes.
But we'd also begin doing some learning. So we'd start learning the letters.
Learning how to write the letters, learning how to read words.
Yeah.
So prep was like the first time we learned how to read and write.
Yeah.
It was very important that you attended those classes.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's very relaxed. So you ended up playing around in more so than learning.
Yeah. We'd also have some math, but yeah.
Math wasn't really it wasn't like memorizing all those formulas and stuff. That was for the
it was very, very basic. And so
very
I think
hands-on.
Yeah. The purpose of it was more so to like get you used to the school environment.
Yeah.
So I think in Australia, the government more so values like mental well-being a lot. So it was just about getting students used to like attending school full time when they were so used to staying at home.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of interaction, a lot of creativity, a lot of playing, as we mentioned. Yeah.
I also want to note that in kindergarten we didn't have uniforms. It was just wear whatever your parents wanted you to wear. But when you started prep, you had to wear the school uniform, and so that was the first time you were like forced to wear a set like uniform, and you didn't get to choose what you wanted to wear. And so there was that transition from kindergarten and prep, if you're wondering what the difference was.
Oh yes. Maybe we should talk about uniform now.
Uniform.
So in Australia, every school has a different
uniform.
And this uniform will generally be like reflective of your school colors.
Yes.
And so some schools will also have, actually most schools will have their logo on their school uniform.
Yeah.
And girls and boys will have different uniforms, but there was nothing wrong with a girl wearing a
The
boy
boys
uniform. So generally, it would just be that same uniform for the whole year, I think.
No, I don't think so. We had winter uniforms as well.
Oh, really? But it wasn't compulsory to wear winter uniform.
Yeah, you could wear your summer uniform all week long, but you'd have the jumpers, the jackets, and hoodies. Was it hoodies? No, hoodies.
We didn't have hoodies. We had these rain jackets.
Rain jackets.
These windbreakers.
Yeah.
And for girls, it was generally a short sleeve dress that was like patterned in your school colors.
Like
my one wasn't really my school colors. I mean, our school colors are blue, but it was more a greenish tinge. So
gotcha.
It really depends on the school. And the school dress did not have the logo on it.
Yes, it didn't have the school logo, but anyone who had seen, if you lived in that area, you would automatically know what school you were from, because even though there were several schools in that area, each of their uniforms was so distinct that you would automatically know what school they would come from.
And boys would wear like collar shirts.
They weren't really shirts; they were more t-shirts with a collar.
Yeah, so a polo shirt like thing, and they could choose to either wear shorts or long pants. Oh, and the polo shirt usually had a logo on it.
Yeah, as well as the pants.
Oh, my school didn't have logo on their pants.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I guess really depends on your school.
Yeah, it depends.
And because the school designs and every school's so different, the consequences of that is that you can only buy the uniform from a particular shop.
Exactly.
And that shop is usually located near the school. But so you couldn't really buy a generic uniform, as every school had a slightly different uniform.
Yeah, you couldn't just go to like your general retail store and say, "Oh, I just want to buy a uniform," because you really couldn't, because each school had their own set of uniform.
And I feel like the uniform, because of that, it was also, uniform was quite expensive.
Yes, very expensive. Especially back when we started school, I think.
It's probably more expensive now with like the economy and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was already quite expensive. I would say like even a normal shirt would be like at least $40, $50.
The jackets were very expensive.
Yeah, the jackets
over $100.
Definitely go up over 100.
Yeah.
And because it was get cold and stuff, people would need those
them.
jackets and jumpers and stuff.
But it was funny because a lot of kids lost their jackets.
Yes,
they ended up in lost property.
A major problem
a huge
of parents
problem
was having the child not lose their uniform. But
yeah.
So that's uniform.
Yes. Shall we move on to the school day structure?
Yes. So talking about school days, we would attend schools after prep for 5 days a week, so Monday to Friday. And of course, we'd have weekends off in Australia.
No school during then.
And about the school hours, so we generally start school at around 9. Maybe some schools will start a bit early, like 8:50.
8:30 if you're really pushing it.
Yeah, but no schools will start before 8:30 generally. Yeah. And then we'd end at around 3 p.m. or like 3:15. Depends on the school again, but school hours are usually like 6 hours altogether. So 6 hours of school every day.
6 hours of school every day, and then you would come home and relax.
Or do extracurricular activities.
Yes. Yes, it's very encouraged to do extracurricular activities in Australia.
And
they really push for it.
Yeah, and many students do actually love doing extracurricular activities. So in the school day from 9 to 3, we would have around 5 subjects.
Around 5 subjects.
Every school differs slightly because I went to 2 primary schools.
Oh, really?
I moved places, and actually I went to 3.
Whoa.
I went to 3 primary schools now that I think about it.
Crazy.
And I do remember that in one of the schools it was 6 subjects. 6 subjects. Yeah.
Wow.
But no, it really 6 sessions. They're not really subjects. We just break down each
sessions.
Day. And each session lasts for like About an hour, sometimes
An
like a bit less. Yeah.
hour. Wow. I think mine only lasted like 45 minutes.
Oh, really? Mine was about,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure mine was an hour for at least my latest school anyway.
Oh.
And so in addition to these different sessions, we would also have two breaks.
Yes.
Yes.
Break time.
Yeah, we have a lunch break and a recess or snack break.
Yes. So we'd have two sessions in the morning, then we'd have lunch, and then we'd have another two sessions, then recess or snack if you call it
Mhm.
now, and then we'd have one final subject session and then go home.
Yeah. And again, this will depend on the school. And
Yeah.
it's really up to the school to structure the day depending on however
Mhm.
they want it. So some schools might do a bit differently, but pretty much every school will have two breaks,
Mhm.
a lunch and a recess. And in terms of like bells and stuff,
Um.
in my school, we use a bell to
Mhm.
signify when class would start in the morning. And then we'd
Ah.
also have bells before each break and after each break to tell
Oh.
us when break time would start and when we'd have to head back to class.
Mhm.
And then
Well,
that's it. We didn't have any other
oh.
breaks, music or bells or anything.
For me, instead of bells, we actually had music.
Ah.
So in the morning, if you started hearing like blasting songs, you'd know, oh wait, it's time to go to class.
Mm.
And we didn't have it before breaks because our teachers would tell us when break would start.
Ah,
We
okay.
actually had it after when we were all outside in the yard, so
Mhm.
we would know when to go back to class. And we had it at the end of the day as well to tell everyone, oh, we're done school now, we can celebrate.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And I think something to note is that in primary school, we'd
Mm.
only have one main teacher. Yeah.
Yes, one main teacher.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so, like, in the mornings, what we'd do is that we would line up, well, for me anyway, we would line up
Mm.
outside our classrooms and then wait for this main teacher to come outside and bring us into class.
Yes, I also had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd always rush to get to, like, line up before, like, the
Yeah.
bell started so we
Oh,
wouldn't be
yeah.
late.
Like if you started hearing like for me the music,
Mhm.
you'd have to like sprint to go line up because
Yeah.
the teachers would be like waiting for you and they're like, "Where is everyone?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so after more, so yes, our
Yeah.
classes actually, we should probably talk about that.
Oh,
So we've already
classes.
mentioned that we only have one main teacher that
Yep.
teaches all of our
Core
core subjects. So like
subjects.
math, reading, writing. Yeah.
Science. Yeah.
Science we had a different teacher. But
Oh,
we'll go into
really?
that later. But yeah.
Oh.
Um, but
Yes.
yeah.
So we stayed with the same class for the whole year and we'd only change if like the next school year started.
Yeah.
And each class only had around 20 to 25 students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my classes were like 2025.
Yeah.
And actually, it really depends. Some classes might have, like, even within the same school, some classes might have 22 people, some might have 23. It just depends on the school enrollment at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's no fixed size, as per se.
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
no classes would go into 30s. It would definitely be like between 20 to 25-ish.
And it wouldn't drop below 20 either, unless there's like a really rare case.
Yeah.
And usually there's 10 to 12 classes per grade.
I think it depends on the size of the school, definitely.
Yeah,
because I know
depending on the size.
in one of the schools I went to,
Mhm.
there was only 6 classes.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So it really depends on, like, basically the size of your school, and
yeah.
depending on, like, whether you're private school or public school, which we might talk about in another episode.
That's
yeah.
true. That's true.
It does depend a lot.
Mhm.
And so when you line up and then the teachers brought you inside the class, and then once you go inside the classroom, what normally happens is that the students would put away their bags on either hooks or these little cubes where you could put in your backpack and stuff.
Yes. And then we'd also have tubs underneath our tables
Mm.
with our names on it. So we put all our books, our stationery, sometimes even your water bottle if you really could fit it in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never did. I just
Oh,
put my pencil
really?
case.
Oh, so I just chuck anything in there. and
Yeah.
then you would go sit on the floor, cross-legged, and then the teacher would mark the roll.
Yeah. So marking the roll would be basically the teacher would call out your name and then you would say things like here
Yeah.
or like present, but most of the time I just said I'm here.
Yeah, you just say here. So the roll order is it goes from your last name to, like, yeah, it's by your last name alphabetically. So if your last name started with A, you'd be at the top of the row. If your last name started with Z, you'd be at the end of the row.
Yeah. And sometimes teachers would change it up because you would have to mark your role every day.
Yes.
Some teachers would do funny things like, oh, when I call out your name, tell me a funny joke or something.
Yeah. Or sometimes it'd be like, oh, instead of saying here, say hello in your native language.
Yeah, so it really depends on the teacher, and
Mhm.
teachers have a lot of flexibility to do whatever they want with
Yeah.
this, basically. As long as they mark who's here and who's not here.
Exactly.
So after we mark the roll, and then we'd usually start class.
Yes.
And our classes in primary school, from what I can remember, is that we'd mostly just sit on the floor first,
Yeah.
and then the teacher would explain the topic of that class.
Yes. Like we'd use the whiteboards or interactive whiteboards,
Oh, yes.
which was a digital screen where teachers could write and present like those slides or whatever material they had.
I love the interactive
I
whiteboard.
love the interactive
Because we do love
whiteboard.
the teacher would write on it, and
And then-
sometimes students would get a chance to write on it.
You'd put your hand up and you're like, can I have a turn at the board?
Yeah, it was very interactive. Like students could ask
Yes.
questions, and the teacher would ask questions to students and
Mhm.
ask them to answer. Sometimes I do remember that we would
Mhm.
be asked to talk to the person next to us for a period of time
Yes.
before we would like go back to class discussion,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
teacher would hear our different ideas.
Yeah.
So,
I remember
yeah, I think this would take up about maybe half the time in the lesson. Maybe sometimes
Yes.
more, sometimes less, depending on the class, of course.
Exactly.
And then we'd move to the table to do the assigned tasks that our teacher had set for us.
Yeah. So it'd be like, okay, time to like write an essay. Well, it wasn't an essay. It would mostly like a short form of writing.
Yeah. So,
Or like,
yeah,
yeah.
depends on the subjects.
Mm.
So, I think maybe we should talk about our subjects now then. So,
Subjects.
Yeah. Again, we have the same teacher for everything
Mm-hmm.
who like teaches all our core subjects. And so, what were your core subjects?
My core subjects. So we had writing, reading, math, and inquiry.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, those are my core subjects.
Yeah,
and it's a bit,
yeah.
I mean, other people might find it a bit strange that we don't have English as per se, but we call it reading and writing. So we split it up into two different subjects.
Yes.
And so in writing, at the start, like in prep, you'd already learn letters. And when you go into grade 1, or like year 1, as we call it, we would learn some words. But
yeah.
I think in year 1, what we already started doing was we started learning different text types. So different formats of writing. So
yeah, like poems and narratives.
Recounts. We did a lot of recounts. So recounts are like telling about your experience.
Yeah, retelling like your experience. So after the holidays, it'd be like, okay, guys, time to write a recount of what you did on the holidays.
And also a lot of informative text.
Yes.
Yeah, so we do our own research on a topic, and then,
which was mostly reading books from the library.
Or okay, maybe we had a little bit of internet searching when we were like a little bit older.
Yeah, but a little bit older.
But
not when we were like very little. No.
Yeah, back then
it was mostly.
I don't think technology was definitely not as developed as now.
Yeah,
it wasn't very
like
developed.
We didn't have ChatGPT to finish our essays.
I know.
No
AI.
No AI.
We had Google. We definitely had Google.
We're
not that old, but yes.
Not that old.
Yes, we had the internet, but most of the time, especially since we were in primary school, we would get our information from books.
Yes, it was like you would go to the school library or the public library, and you'd find like whatever book and try and write and copy stuff from the book.
Yeah, like get information to write these informative texts. Oh, we also love procedural texts.
Procedures were
those are
best.
Fun. Okay,
because you actually did the procedure.
Yeah. So in procedural text, it's basically like writing a recipe. So the great thing about this is that in primary school we would actually make the food.
Yeah.
So like
So we made jelly cups one time because we had to write a procedure for jelly cups.
Yeah.
And so in class the teacher brought in those materials to make jelly cups, and we spent the whole lesson making jelly cups instead of writing.
Great. It was really fun. Like the teacher would get us like different ingredients. Like I remember making cornflakes. Sticky cornflakes. And then delicious. So we in one class it would just like be basically doing the like making the recipe,
Mm.
and then we'd also have to write down what we did,
Mm.
and then that afterwards, like maybe in the next lesson, depending how long the lesson was,
Yeah.
we'd then write out the steps and materials, and that was like our procedural text. It was really
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I
So
do, yeah.
basically, in Australian primary schools, a lot of like lessons were hands on instead of just like core memorization or just simply reading and writing.
Yeah. So that was writing. It was
Yeah.
definitely very fun in
Mm.
primary school.
Oh, I do want to know, in writing, we also worked on our handwriting.
Oh,
Because,
yes.
yeah, you know how some people really focus on their handwriting when you see them with like really nice handwriting? And some people honestly didn't care about the
I
handwriting
cared,
lessons.
but my handwriting is not great.
I
at all.
love
I
the
have
handwriting
terrible handwriting.
lessons.
Jocelyn has great handwriting.
Thank you so much.
I have terrible handwriting that I don't know how people read, but yes.
It's readable. It's readable.
Yes.
Okay.
But yes, no,
yeah.
in regards to handwriting,
Hmm.
at first we would only be using like pencils to write.
Yes, we had lined paper as well.
And then depending on the school, our school had it in year 5, I think year 5.
Year 5.
And so the teacher would look at your handwriting in year 5
Mhm.
and then give you a pen license.
Oh.
So depending how neat your handwriting was.
I had that in year 4.
Yeah. So you could only use a pen to write if your handwriting was deemed nice enough by the teacher.
Yes, I remember when I was in year 4, in order to get our pen license, we had to do a bunch of like different handwriting exercises, like writing. We had to learn how to write in cursive, actually.
Oh, we didn't have that.
Oh, really? We had to learn how to write in cursive. I think it was mainly my teacher because he learned it from his teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had to practice like writing curves and swirls and whatever. And that's how you obtained your pen license.
Yeah, and that was a big thing in year 4, year
Yeah,
5.
year 4,
Like,
year 5.
everyone would be like trying to write well so they
Yeah.
could use a pen.
It was a huge flex if you could get your pen license first.
Yeah.
Everyone was fighting for it.
But I think in year 6 no one cared. And everyone
Yeah.
would just use the pen even if
Yeah.
they hadn't gotten their pen
Yeah,
license.
they're like, oh, well, who cares?
It was just an incentive to get like
Yeah.
students to write neatly
Yeah.
and to focus on their handwriting.
Mhm.
Because back then we basically did we have we had computers but not in classes.
Nobody had a personal computer because we didn't need to bring it.
Yeah.
I remember only in year 2 I had like shared laptops in the class. They weren't laptops. They were computers, like the big bulky ones.
Oh really? Oh yeah, I remember that
Those
too. Yeah.
those were only in like the year 2 classroom. When I was in year 2, that was the only time I had computers in my class, and the rest of the time we didn't have any computers in our class.
I remember when I was in year 5 or year 6, we also started getting iPads. So that was the technology we used in class.
There was like a IT room, like a technology room, and then the teachers would borrow iPads, or like sometimes in the newer like years, the older years, they got like laptops where we could share and borrow. Yeah.
Yeah, technology wasn't a big thing when I was growing up.
Neither was I.
Yeah,
So
shows how old we are. But yes, getting back to we talked about writing, so reading. Okay,
reading.
I think reading might be a bit different to other countries because in reading,
it was just reading.
Yeah, so no, basically in reading, we would
read we would read texts like with the teacher. The teacher would sit and then we'd all sit in a circle, or like definitely on the floor, and the teacher would read out to us, or we would take our own books and read in the library.
I think that was when in the library.
Yeah, I remember our teacher always took us to the library.
Yeah, when we were younger, I think when we were in like grade 1 or grade 2 stuff, the text that we'd read would be like very short texts.
Yeah.
That we'd finish within the few 10-20 minutes.
It was like a lot of picture stories. None of them were like non-picture because no one was interested in non-picture books.
Yeah, and then I think in year 3 onwards, we started reading, like the teacher started reading novels.
Yes, novels.
And so we wouldn't get through the entire book in class. We would we'd read a little bit
like
of the
chapters
book,
and chapters.
just maybe one chapter of the book in one lesson. And then after we did some reading, we would go and do some other reading activities. So like learning how to summarize what we had read, reading between the lines.
Oh yes.
Inferring, discussing our feelings about the book, the mood, the tone. I guess also discussing like predicting what would happen next and
Mm.
thinking about why the author would write in that way. Yeah,
Yes.
so
But it's
but
very basic on the
yeah,
level.
and particularly it only started really when you got a bit older.
Yeah.
And then I think was it year six that we started our own books or no? That was probably high school, wasn't it?
No, actually, in year four, I think for me, well, year four, year six, we're probably around that age.
Mm.
After we went to the library and borrowed some books, because our school had a library, so we go to the during class we go to the library, pick our own books, then borrow them, and then bring them back to the classroom and read them on our own for like 10, 15
Yeah,
minutes.
those are like
Yeah,
nice lessons because you just relax and
yeah,
just
you're like
read.
there was no pressure to do any work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was our reading lesson. And how about math? Okay, so
Math
math is
was not like the math you're thinking.
no. So in math, we would cover different topics every year.
Like, yeah, it'd be like geometry, subtraction, addition.
Yeah.
But most of it wasn't like memorization. It like you wouldn't have to memorize the like the timetables. Instead you just be like hands on. It's very hands on, like
Yeah.
yeah, with physical objects.
Yeah, particularly when you're younger. So there was a
Mm.
lot of like to do place value and stuff. They would use these
Mm.
blocks and show you like, and with like probability, they would like
Mm.
use different counters or like
Oh
dice, and we'd actually be
yes.
doing these probability experiments to actually try and get it in our head.
Yeah.
And I think every year you would build on the same topics. So
Mhm.
you would start off with like basic understanding, and then you would build on it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one thing to note though is that particularly in different schools, that there would be you might be split into different groups after you cover like the main topic.
Ah,
So
yes, depending on your skill level and
yeah, it
how
depends
far
on
you've
how well you
advanced.
understood something. So like
Mm.
for example, some students might need more help, or some students might have already learnt it and find it really easy. So
Mm.
after we'd have the main discussion, talking about the topic, we'd do different tasks, right? And then in these different tasks, some teachers would create like different levels for you. And depending on how well you understood
Mm.
something, that would indicate what level you'd go to and what tasks you would do.
Mhm.
But it was all very supportive, so no one really cared whether you're doing like something you're like of a
Yeah,
lower
if you're a
level or of a
lower,
higher
higher
level.
level.
There wasn't really that judgment around
Yeah.
everything. So it was just
Oh.
about improving yourself.
Yeah. I also do want to know, like apart from math and like subjects, there would also be external like help if you needed extra help, or there'd be a program where you could extend your learning. Well, especially in my school,
Mm.
like for my school there was a program that would help EAL kids, like students who didn't speak English as an additional language. And then there was also another program for students who like were more who could where the teachers thought you could like push your learning a bit more, so it was extended learning, so
Yeah.
you'd learn additional things on top of what you learned in
Yeah,
class.
so like higher grade stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that would depend for math only pretty much. I
Mm,
think for reading and stuff we didn't have that
not
much writing.
really.
Um in terms of assessment, that's how you do it. And our assessment is a little bit different to what people might expect. So the
Mm,
only subject where we'd really have tested
it was
was
math.
math.
Yeah.
And so that would help you determine the level. And we would have a pre-test. So before, did we have a pre-test? I think I had a pre-test.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
pre-tests.
So that was before the teacher taught you about the topic. And then they just want to see how much you know so they can plan
Mm.
their lessons around it and move you into different groups.
Yes.
And then afterwards, after you've learned that topic, we'd have a post-test. And that would see how much you learned. And these tests were like really short. They were just done in your classroom, maybe like 40 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't really stressful. Most students wouldn't really study for it because it was just things that they did in class. It was just very non-stress environment. And
Yeah. For other subjects, like, oh, we didn't talk about inquiry, which they now call integrated studies. So it was basically like humanities, a bit of mix of science and
yeah.
all that.
So
Yeah.
the name inquiry basically tells you what it is. It's like
Mm.
exploring the world. You're
Yes.
like inquiring. So I think every term you would have a different topic. And
Mm.
this topic would depend, of course, on the teacher. Because I think
Or the school.
or the school. Yeah, the teachers would come together to come up with a topic, and then
Mm.
you'd learn like different things about it. So I do remember that one topic we had was about fairy tales, and so we'd spend
Ooh.
like the semester of the term like researching different fairy tales from like around the world. And
Ooh.
so it was all about like your inquiry based skills. So your critical
Yes.
thinking, your exploration, curiosity, that kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, for me, one of the topics I really remember was natural disasters.
Oh, I had that
Ah,
too.
yes, because one of the assessments, it was a project, we had to create a diorama of a
Oh.
natural disaster. So a diorama is like a physical display of what like the event, so because of a natural disaster, so if you had chosen a tornado, like you'd have to do a diorama, a model of what a tornado would look like.
Mm-mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember doing that. What I did is I put
Yeah.
alternate water in a jar and started swirling it around.
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember one project I did that was
Mhm.
I was I don't know what we were doing. I think we were doing simple machines.
Oh,
And
simple
I actually made
machines.
a umbrella backpack and that was kind of cool.
Whoa, that's
So
so
yeah, I think it was
cool.
in year five and
A
year
young
six.
inventor.
Yes, I do love inventing it. So we made this cool
Mm.
backpack and I put so much effort in. I even went to like our local hardware shop and got like waterproof
Oh.
like these metal rod things,
Mhm.
and I cut off an umbrella, I do remember, and I put like plastic over it to make it more waterproof, and like sewed up to make
Wow.
the backpack. It was really fun.
Whoa, that's so
Yeah, no,
cool.
inquiry was a great time for you to like really explore your
Yes.
interests, explore the world,
Mm.
like get more curious about different things.
Yeah, the best thing about inquiry was like when you basically had free reign over your projects
Mm.
of what you wanted to do. And even though they were technically assessments, it was more about having fun with your project.
Yeah, and the teachers wouldn't mark it harshly
Harshly.
at
They were
all.
very like light with their
Mm.
marking. So
Oh, and then we also had specialist subjects.
yes. So they're like once every week for like 1 hour,
Yeah,
depending on what your school did. For me, we had PE, which is physical education,
yeah,
art, performing arts, so like drama, theater, science.
yeah. I don't know why science was a
Science was a specialist
specialist subject.
subject.
Oh, and the thing about specialist subjects is that they're taught by
Different
different
teachers,
teachers.
other than your main
Yeah, so
teacher.
maybe our teachers didn't know much about science, so
Yeah.
that's why we called it a specialist subject because we'd get a different teacher for it.
Yes, and we'd actually go to like a different classroom. Oh yes.
We go to a lab for us,
Ah yes, a
and
lab.
we do experiments. It was great.
Oh
It was really fun.
yes, there were like pet bugs and stuff as well, and also languages.
Ah,
So
yes.
in these specialist subjects, they're all in different area, like different classrooms. Like PE was in a gym, art was in the art room,
Mm,
but for languages, you would actually do it in your normal classroom.
yeah.
Because the language teacher would actually come to your classroom instead of you going to them.
And depending on the school, you
Mm.
would learn different languages. So I think some of the more common languages in Melbourne are French, Japanese.
Sometimes Chinese. I think Chinese is more
I think it's quite
private
rare.
school.
I think it's quite rare,
Yeah.
actually.
For me, I learned Indonesian
Oh
in
yeah,
primary
there's
school.
Indonesian,
Yeah.
German. I did mostly French.
Ah yes,
Yeah.
French. French was in my later years of primary school.
Yeah, and sometimes I think in different schools you have a choice, but in our
Mm.
school we only had French, so
Yeah.
we could just do French the whole
Yeah.
time.
There was like no chance because I think for my school budget wasn't like that great because it's a public school.
Yeah, mine as
And
well.
it was the only public primary school in that area, so all the students went there, and so the budget was quite tight.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's about language, and those are our
Mm,
specialist subjects.
yes.
In terms of homework,
Homework.
actually, we barely had any homework
Yes.
in primary school. Definitely
Like,
a lot
very,
less than
very
other countries,
rare.
I would say,
Mm.
particularly Asian countries,
Ah
where they
yes.
have a lot of
it's-
homework.
The amount of homework we have is not homework.
It
It's
is
very
actually, it's
laughable.
hilarious if you actually
Yeah.
compare it, but yeah.
Yes.
I think the main homework they would have from the very start of like prep is reading every day.
yes.
So what you have to do is that you would read at home. So you would have to read a book at home for about 20 minutes, and then you should be reading to your parents, and your parents would have to like
sign
sign
So
up.
you have this like in
Mhm.
primary schools you have this diary or
Yeah.
school diary where you basically you write like your summaries of what you read, how long you read, and then have your parents sign it up.
Yeah. Actually, you didn't even have when we were like in like prep year 1, year 2. Like when you were younger, you didn't have to write something. You just had to write the book you read, and then your parents would leave some comments maybe about like
Yeah,
how they
yeah.
read, like whether they read fluently or not. And then so
Mm.
the parents would do the writing and tell
Yeah.
you how it went. And so the teacher would be able to evaluate how good like your reading skills were.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that continued all the way till year 6. But when you get
Yeah.
older, you would definitely be the ones writing the summaries. And your parents would still have to
Yeah.
sign it though.
Yep, still to sign it.
And so yes, that was the main
Mm.
homework. Reading.
Yes. But then from like year 4 onwards, you'd start getting spelling words or like weekly math
Mm.
worksheets. But this is only like once a week thing.
Yeah.
So you had like the whole week to finish one worksheet
Yeah,
or
and
memorize like 5 words.
yeah, it really depends on the school.
Yeah.
And then I think for me, we also
Mhm.
had, I think when we got like year 5, year 6, we'd have
Ah.
a table of different tasks from like reading, math,
Mhm.
writing, and then inquiry. And then you had to complete a task from each subject each week. And
Oh.
yeah, so it was really like, it wasn't very stressful at all because
It was very
we had a
chill.
lot of time to do homework.
Yeah.
And
And
the
it wasn't
homework,
like stacking on top of
yeah,
each
it
other at
wasn't
all.
very difficult
Yeah.
at all. It definitely wasn't. It was very chill because
I think because in Australia, the focus is for students to actually enjoy the education instead of having all that pressure to finish everything and like become the top. Because there was no pressure
yeah,
to like become the number one like student in your
because we
class.
wouldn't have like rankings or
Yeah.
grades revealed. I don't
There were
think we
no
even had
grades.
any grades. I mean, we had reports where the teacher would like
Ah.
say whether you're like at standard,
Or
below
like
standard, or above
above
standard.
standard. But none of this was ever like published outside. Like
It was just to
no.
your parents, and
Yeah.
that's it. And oh yeah, and that brings us to like discipline, I guess, because
Mm.
you would never get in trouble for like failing a test or
Yeah.
like doing bad in tests.
You would never
If you
like
did fail a test, the teacher would just sit down and go through where you went
quietly.
wrong, ask like whether you need help with anything.
And you might resit the test later
Yeah,
on.
but that
But it
was it.
wasn't like it wasn't detrimental to your
Yeah,
school
it
life.
definitely wasn't.
Even if you failed, you wouldn't fail.
Yeah,
And you would still move on to the next grade.
yeah, exactly. And in terms of behavior, I guess what we had was we had like these cards. So we had like
Oh.
red, yellow, red and yellow cards. So if you did
Mhm.
something like bad, let's say like
Also like in sport.
yeah, so like yeah, like in sport. So if you like talked over the teacher, for example, like if you talked without putting your hand up, then the teacher would give you like a warning, and that would be like a yellow card. But if you got too many warnings, you'd get a red card. And then
Ooh.
if you got a red card, then you would have to like stay in during lunchtime,
Oh,
and not go
really?
outside. Um,
Oh, for me,
mm,
we actually had like pieces of paper. It was like four. We had 4 levels, so it was green, yellow, red, and black. Black
okay.
was the worst because that meant your parents would be called. So everyone would stay on the green. So there were 4 sheets of paper, and everyone had their name tags on the green. If your teacher was like, "Oh, you did something bad," go put your name on the yellow. That meant that
Oh,
was the warning.
mm,
But if the teacher had to keep repeating over and over, but you're still on the yellow, they would put you on red. See,
mm.
red would mean you'd have to stay home, and the teacher would no, sorry, not stay home, stay stay in the classroom when everyone went off to break, and they'd have a talk with you.
Yeah,
If you did something really, really bad,
yeah,
like let's say throw a chair at someone,
yeah.
that happened in my class actually.
Yeah, me too as well. We also had to
Yeah,
stay
we had
with
a
that.
lot of like, oh, scary, and so the name got put on the black card, which meant your parents would be called.
And also, I think when it came to like those extreme cases where like the
Mm.
students were being really aggressive and throwing chairs, the students would have to talk to the principal with their parents,
Ah,
and they might have been
yes.
suspended for a few days.
Yes.
So that means they just had to stay home and not go to school for those few days.
Mm.
And there are some cases in some schools where students have done something so terrible that they have gotten expelled. So they're
Ooh.
not allowed to like go to the school again.
Yeah.
But those are really, really
Very
rare
rare.
cases, and only if you've done something like really, really terrible.
Yeah, which is very, very rare. So
Yeah.
don't worry.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen
I've never
anyone
seen
getting
anyone get expelled.
I
Yeah,
guess.
I've seen people get suspended but not expelled.
Yeah, it generally doesn't
It
go
doesn't
to
really
that
happen
stage.
because the teachers like stop it in time.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I do remember also that some teachers like to do these reward systems.
Ah,
So I remember we had
yes.
this like reward system in I think year 5. So
Mm-hmm.
we had money. So no, not real
Oh,
money, like
money.
fake money. So like every time you did something well, the teacher would reward you some like kind of fake money that you would accumulate, and then you
Ah,
could use this fake money
to buy
to
stuff.
buy stuff. So like things like
Oh.
free time, time on the computer.
Oh.
Sometimes the teacher would also buy prizes that you could like exchange for these
Wow.
free money, for these like fake money, and so it was like a reward
Um.
system to encourage students to do the right thing and like to participate.
Yeah, we had something like that, but instead of money, we had like stickers. So if you
Ah,
got we had a stickers chart, and if you filled up all the stickers on the sticker chart, you could like redeem a prize from the teacher. And it's usually some like cute stationery or some
yeah,
like little toy, and it was very very fun to like. Everyone tried really hard to get those like prizes because
yeah.
everyone loves prizes
It
and
was an
games.
effective strategy, I would say, because people would behave better when they had like these prizes and stuff.
Yeah, it really helped. Like most people are quite disciplined at
Yeah.
school.
And so, in addition to like our normal classes and subjects, there would also
Mm-hmm.
be like other activities.
Ah,
So, I think
yes.
assembly. We'd have
Ah,
assembly once a week. We had some schools
yeah.
have it like once every term or once every 2 weeks.
Mm.
And basically, in assembly, what would happen is that all the classes in
From
the school.
yeah, every single. It depends on how big your school is. It's either split like, for me, my school was a primary secondary school,
Hmm,
so we had a primary school assembly, and then the secondary students had their secondary assembly.
yeah,
Mm.
we were just a primary school, so we would have
Ah,
like all our students, like in the entire school, come together, and
yes.
then assemblies are pretty boring, if I can say. Very boring. In assembly, we basically sit for an hour on the
Mm.
floor. Teachers would be standing there watching us.
The teachers are like hawks. They
Yeah,
like watch you, and if you dare like bitch it or something, they're like, "You there? Be quiet, focus."
yeah. And in the assembly, what we would do is the first thing we do is sing the
The national
national anthem.
anthem. So everyone in primary school is a compulsory thing actually in the government. I'm not sure in private schools, but for every public schools, you had to sing the national anthem
Yeah,
in every assembly.
yeah. We just sing the national
Yeah,
anthem, and then
and then
after that, I think it would be like the principal's address. So the principal would
yes.
talk about, I don't know what's happening.
I have no idea. I've
Yeah, I
never
don't
paid
know. They would
attention.
talk about like the school,
Yeah.
what they expected from us,
The
what they're
best
proud of.
thing, the best thing about assemblies was the certificates and awards.
Ah, yes. So during assembly, sometimes they would give out like awards for like
Yeah.
students who did well,
So
or
it'd be like, or like subject excellence awards. So if you did really well in English or reading, you'd be like, oh, um, blah 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 student has won the reading award, and so you'd stand up and everyone would be cheering, and then you'd walk to the front and
yeah,
get your certificate.
yeah. But it wasn't just like subjects actually. We there was actually a lot
Mm.
more awards for like things like participation,
Ah, yes,
like
participation.
improvement,
We had like
effort.
sportsmanship as
Yeah,
well.
and then showing like school values, so like
Ah, yes.
honesty, like responsibility, respect.
Respect. Yes. It was very like honorable if you got those awards.
Yeah,
And sometimes if you won like the art award, you would get like a free gift, like an art set or like paints or
yeah. But I
something.
feel like these awards are mostly like for the final term assembly, so at
Final
the end of
term
each term.
assemblies.
Like in other than normal assemblies, we just mostly have like the principal talking, like maybe some students would also do some
Mm.
talking as well.
Sometimes we'd have guest
Yeah, share the
speakers.
experience. We never had guest speakers. We just had
Oh,
people
really?
talking. Um,
We had like, I remember during assembly we were taught about bullying.
mm,
Because I think there was like a bullying case in my grade during grade 6, and we actually had the police come in.
oh,
Yeah, the police had to come in and talk to us. And I think because when I was in year 6, and it was like the start of the social media age,
mm,
and so we had to be taught like how to be safe online,
yeah,
because prior to that no one had ever I think I feel really old. None of us had like social media or phones. Like no one. There was very little access to like internet. Most people like got their information from TV. Like,
yeah,
and even so most of us was watching like cartoons and stuff.
yeah. And oh, we never had that in assembly. We had it in
Really?
what we call incursions. So incursions are
Oh.
basically like activities where like you would have external people
Come
come
in.
into your school. So those are your
Yeah.
incursions, and you would do like activities, like there's guest speakers, like about
Mhm.
bullying. We had that as well,
Yeah,
but we
yes.
didn't have that in STEM. We had it as an incursion,
Ah.
and I think separate to incursions are excursions.
Excursions.
So excursions are where students get out of the school.
Yes.
So they go to their class and they like go travel somewhere,
Mm.
or like you have to pay for it, but like you would go
Yeah.
to school in a bus, and
Mm.
then you'd go to these different places that would support your learning. So
Yeah, so like most of the excursions were for like inquiry.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So I think we went to the zoo. I do remember.
Mm.
So I think one of
Yes.
our inquiry topics was learning about animals. So
Mm.
we'd go on an excursion to the zoo, and at the zoo we'd get to like look around at different animals.
Ah.
We also went to Science Works,
Oh,
which is like
yes.
this really cool science interactive.
Like
I don't know. It's not like a theme park, but it's like you get to do different
mm.
science activities. And like really,
Yeah.
so it's like building on your learning outside of school.
Yes, it's very interactive. And like depending on what like you learn in class depending on what excursion you went to. So
Yeah.
it was depending on like also what your school budget could be.
No, because like you would have to pay for your own
Yeah.
incursion and excursions.
And they didn't want students, the parents, to pay so much. So wasn't limited. Like we wouldn't go to Disney World, or we
Yeah.
wouldn't leave the state.
Exactly.
Or like
and in some private schools they do.
private
but,
schools
like,
do, but like most public
public
schools,
schools,
they
yeah.
don't leave the state, or like they don't go too far from where the school is, because mainly concerning for the parents' budget. So
Yeah.
they want to stress the parents out.
And this would take up like the whole day,
Mm.
and it would be like during school hours.
Yeah.
So you would come back home on time.
Mhm. But if you do like outside the main region of where your school is, there was also camp.
Yes.
Yes.
So in Australia, well, I don't know about Australia, but in Melbourne,
Mm-hmm.
they were really big on camps.
Camps.
And so camps happen starting from when you're in year 3,
Mhm.
and you have it every 2 years. So year 3, year 5, and then like in high school as well.
Yeah.
So basically camp was, you would have like 3 days or maybe 4 days in some schools where you would be like living with your school and your classmates without your parents.
Yeah. So basically, I remember in my year 5 camp, we went to Phillip Island, which is a small island where the fairy penguins are, which is fairy penguins are native to Melbourne, so you wouldn't find them
Victoria.
Victoria.
Native to Victoria.
Native
not
to
Melbourne.
Victoria, so you wouldn't find them anywhere else. So it was very unique for us.
Yeah. So it's like during these 3 days, you don't have contact with your parents. You're just living alone.
You're not allowed to bring a phone, by the way. Not that anyone had
Yeah.
phones.
So it's really about gaining like your independence and like
yeah. But the thing was, when you think of camp, we're not in tents. We're in cabins.
Yeah. So
that are like built structures.
Yeah. So you would like you would bring a sleeping bag, you'd bring your luggage for 3 days, and then you'd have to like
they'd provide you lunch and breakfast, dinner.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to go scavenge for food.
Yes.
But you do But you do like camp activities. So you'd build like a hut, I remember, with like sticks. You'd roast marshmallows over the fire.
Yeah, canoeing.
Canoeing.
Like yabbying, like fishing for like
yabbies.
You
do all that stuff, but you don't live in a tent.
Yes.
That's the best thing.
So you're like outdoors in nature, like doing different activities. So really like build your teamwork skills, your independence, your confidence. So it's all about those hands-on skills.
And camp was usually at the end of the year, so it's like a big reward for all the hard work you did throughout the year.
And it's a highlight for a lot of students. Like a lot of students love going to camp.
Yeah, it's like everyone's so excited because they get to spend time with their friends and enjoy like nature.
Yeah. So that happens like every 2 years, as we said, generally, starting from year 3. So you actually start when you're quite a young age. Yeah. Where you just really get to like...
They try and build your independence a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was camp. What else have we not talked about? I guess we haven't talked about our lunch and recess.
Oh, lunch and recess.
So yes, we'd have 2 breaks every day at school. And so the first break, I think, depends on your school. We had lunch first in primary school.
Oh yeah, we did too.
Yeah, and lunch would last about 40 minutes for us. And what happened in lunch was that we'd first have 10 minutes in the classroom to eat our lunch first. And most of the time, students would bring in lunch from home. So like the students would like pack sandwiches for like... No, parents would pack sandwiches for the students that they would eat in class. But for some students
who like didn't have their parents to make lunch or couldn't
Or their parents are busy and stuff.
too busy, they would actually have lunch orders from the canteen. So basically, in the morning, they'd get a piece of it was a paper bag, and they'd write down what they wanted to eat, like from the canteen menu.
Yeah.
Put the money inside the paper bag, and then hand it to the canteen, where they collect it at lunchtime.
Yeah. And then, we would have 2 class like monitors in who would like be designated to go collect everyone's lunch order and then bring it back to the classroom
so
that everyone could eat at the same time. So that was great. And then so after you would like eat lunch in the classroom, then you'd have like time, then you'd have to go outside and you could just play outside on the playgrounds or just like talk with your friends or like play football on the oval.
Yeah, it's very like fun.
Something I want to say there is that in primary school, there was this big rule that you had to have no hat, no play. So
this is a huge Australian rule that almost every student who's been in who's had Australian primary school experience definitely know this rule.
Yes.
No hat, no play.
So exactly. So if you didn't have a hat with you, if you didn't wear a hat, you couldn't like go outside and play. You just had to sit down in the shade with a teacher watching you.
Yep.
And it was so sad and it was so boring. So everyone would have to like try and remember to bring their hats.
Yes.
And actually it's a good thing because in Australia the UV like is really bad. The sunlight is really bad.
The ozone layer is like completely gone.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in primary school, it was just starting to like be destroyed.
Yeah, climate change.
So it's very important like to wear sunscreen all the time, wear your hat during the summer, like
especially during summer, but also during winter we'd have to wear hats just to make sure like you're not getting like skin cancer in the future, because
it's very important because unfortunately Australia's ozone layer is now completely gone.
Yes, so it's not completely gone, it's recovered a bit.
Recovered.
But it is important that you be like sun smart and that you really like look after your like skin and that you make sure you're protected. So that was a big thing in primary school that was drilled into us. And
but in secondary school you no longer needed to wear a hat.
But you should still wear a hat
because it was up to your responsibility to be sun safe.
We'll talk about secondary school in next episode. Yeah, but also during primary school you would also have teachers like who were like guard duties. Yard duties, yes. And they would like walk around, and if you need help or anything, if like a student fell down,
they always had a first aid kit with them.
Yeah. So they would be there monitoring the students to see like if anyone needed help or if someone was like being mean to another student, they would step in. So that was their role. And like teachers would rotate each break.
Yeah. So they wouldn't like be forced to stay in the yard.
Yeah.
And I think they wouldn't stay there for the whole break. It'd be like half of lunch and then half
with another teacher.
Lunch. Yeah. But unless recess, because recess
was generally shorter.
So it'd just be one teacher.
Yeah. So I think recess was like 20 or 30 minutes depending on the school. And then during recess you would just be outside the whole time. But like you would also be like eating snacks like fruit, biscuits, chips, and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So and during snack and lunch, even though you had already eaten lunch, you could also go and buy stuff from the canteen.
Oh yes, the canteen. The canteen, apart from lunch orders, like you could line up and then go see the hot food, the cold food.
Yes.
I remember during the summertime, a lot of people would buy Zupa Dupers, which is like icy poles.
Icy poles, ice cream.
Which is very popular. And back then, it was a lot cheaper than it is now.
Yeah.
Like 50 cents for an icy pole.
Yeah, students love to like buy these like sweet treats during a canteen. Nice. And then at the end of the day, you would just like when your teacher said you could go at like 3 p.m. or 3:15.
Like everyone would have packed our bags, sit on the floor, and still cross-legged, and then the teacher would be like, "Okay, everyone, you can leave," or they'd be like really mean, and they're like, "Anyone who's wearing a hat can go." And stuff like that.
And that's it, I guess. Well, that's primary school in Australia. In Melbourne, Australia, I should say.
In Melbourne.
We can't speak
our
for other
personal
states.
experiences from a very long time ago.
Yes, so it
might change a lot. Like I'm sure a lot of children in primary school have like their own personal devices now.
Yeah.
Back when we didn't have it.
Yeah, but hopefully you enjoyed listening to our experiences and learnt something new, I guess. Seeing how different we are in Australia and Melbourne compared to like other countries. But yes, hopefully you enjoyed it, and
we'll see you next time.
Yes. See you in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye. Z.I.E. Talk with me. Z.I.E. Talk with me. Immerse yourself, express yourself, learn English naturally.